Hello, and welcome back to another Sims 4 video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's something I've not done in a long time. Now, way back, I've done some recreations of IRL builds, and one that's still my favorite to this day is I recreated this like very infamous pink Victorian mansion that was abandoned, and I went through a lot of YouTube videos to get the actual floor plan laid out and tried to imitate it as best I could. I had so much fun with that, and I wanted to try something similar since it had been a while, and one of my friends over on Twitch, Finch, also known as Sims by Finch previously, we both love horror and horror movies. That's something I think a lot of people are surprised by. I love horror games, horror in general, and Finch does as well. And Finch is someone who really loves to execute the exterior and like build shells and do the exterior of them. I'm someone who really enjoys the interior aspect of building and doing design and things like that with furnishing. So we thought we'd come together and collaborate on this. So we are recreating the house from the original Exorcist movie. And I did make sure I grabbed the floor plan that Finch used over on her stream on Twitch whenever she was doing this. And I did want to say I had a lot of fun going and watching the movie and taking screenshots. So I put together these mini slideshows that you'll see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And those were the images I was using as a reference point for trying to imitate the interior as much as possible. So let's just go ahead and dive right on in. As you can see, like the house is already built again. That's because Finch did the house. And I did have to make some tweaks to it, which she was understanding of and she knew I was going to have to do just whenever I was trying to look at the floor plan and figure out how I wanted it to fit more exact whenever I'm trying to replicate the floor plan for the movie. Now, I will say right off the bat with this, that one thing that's really interesting is obviously the Exorcist house is real, but it's not exactly as it looks in the movie. So the Georgetown house that was used for the exterior didn't naturally line up with the famous staircase the movie needed. So the production added this temporary false wing or front to the house to make the fall from the window visually work, which is a really interesting aspect, I think. So I'm recreating more so the movie version of the house. You know, obviously it's inspired by the actual floor plan of the house, but some other things just didn't work very well, like with the staircase scene. It just wasn't going to work with the way they wanted the movie to go. So we are imitating the interior from the movie, but it is inspired by the actual house. So just wanted to clarify that because you'll see me make some choices that maybe in the floor plan are not there or something like that. And I will say right off the bat too, that there are obviously more rooms in the house than what we see in the movie. So I did have to take some liberties with a few rooms that I did, more so upstairs. This entire wing right now that I'm working on right here where these two rooms are, there were actually two other rooms across the hallway, but obviously with the width of that, I couldn't fit 4 rooms in that one wing with a hallway. This would not have worked. So I only did 2, and that's by the mom's bedroom. That's just how it goes. Now, one thing I want to do too in this video is to like sprinkle some fun facts throughout. And one thing, while we're working on the staircase in the basement that I did want to talk about is that the famous stairs were obviously already there before the movie. They didn't like create this staircase. And I actually have a picture of myself walking up the stairs my first time like actually experiencing DC. And I say that because I've been to DC before, but I was there for a fellowship one summer and got to spend several weeks there. And it was fun to live there temporarily. And my friend and I like went to Georgetown and roamed around and got some really fun pictures. So it was really cool to see those in person, but the Exorcist steps were previously known as the M Street steps, and that's just because they're right off M Street in Georgetown, which is like the street that everything is on, like all your shops, restaurants, and things to do for the most part. So I did want to highlight that because I think it's really cool and they are very, very famous. It became a landmark and tourist attraction. And even the National Park Service describes the stairs as an important pedestrian link to a tourist attraction because of the film in Georgetown. So I think that's a really cool thing that's kind of stuck through over the past 50, 60 years now since the filming of the movie, which is absolutely crazy to think that this movie has been around that long. But right now I'm working on the basement, and the basement itself has a lot of little details. We see that like Reagan does a lot of art down here, and there's like a little creative space for her. There's laundry downstairs. There's like woodworking, like wood bench stuff that's in the basement. Just everything that you could think of is in the basement. In a typical basement, you have your hot water heater as well. So I put in this little room we never see the inside of, by the way, this room that's under the staircase. So I put a desk in there. And I will say I used two CC objects, which I usually don't use CC in my builds, but it was just for the fun of it. You do not need to have these objects. I put a Ouija board in that room just for fun, and I put like a voodoo doll in there eventually as well, just for the vibes of the build. So I wanted to have some like fun nods to that. So you can see that red Ouija board there. And then for the attic, I do actually do the attic. And that's kind of funny because for the attic, we literally get one picture in the entire movie, like one little scene that I got a snapshot where you can barely see anything. But we did pull a lot of information from that photo. But I used this attic door. It's just like an opening thing, you know, like the typical pull down attic doors. It's one of those because I wanted it to be more realistic with that. So I wanted like to include a couple of nods that I just couldn't do otherwise. It just seemed weird to put an attic space that wasn't accessible, and I didn't want to put a ladder because that just would have looked weird in the middle of a house, especially that's styled like this. So I ended up like focusing a lot on the art area in this corner. I have the ping pong table, which was an important aspect. There's this big freezer that's underneath the staircase. And what I did for that, since we don't have deep freezers like that in the game, I just put two mini fridges side by side that are white, and it gives the same aesthetic of one of those big deep freezers. I don't know. I feel like that's a hack. It might not be like that big of a hack, but it's kind of a cool idea. We have like a poster with an elephant. So I put the elephant picture down here. We actually have a lot of fun nods to elephants in this house and just animals in general. There's a lot of like animal art and animal decor. So you'll see me put a lot of animal decor throughout the house, and that's just like as a nod to that. And it's kind of funny also to see how absolutely crazy maximalistic houses were back then. Not to say that they're not now, but it's so funny how in this day and age, especially in movies and such with more modern homes, like everything's so open. There's not a ton of clutter everywhere in the build. And then you pull out an old movie like this and you see every room has so much stuff in it. So I did try to spend a decent amount of time cluttering up some areas in this house that like were nods to the film having so much stuff in every room. So I'm working on the kitchen now. This is like a big pantry space. We don't formally see it in the movie, but I just put some like fun food clutter and kitchen clutter objects in there that you can, you know, reference just as a nod to that in real life if you were to have that. And now I had to get a little bit creative with the peninsula in the kitchen because there is like some open glass and shelving and stuff with a lot of things on it. Obviously, these come with stuff already on them, so I didn't spend a lot of time cluttering that, but I did use tool mod a little bit to like double stack these upper cabinets and have them float above just to give the same idea of what we see in the movie. And I ended up not doing the 4 cubes and instead overlapped the middle one, so it was 3 cubes across because it didn't stick out so much in the movie and come across, and I didn't want it to be so bulky sticking out. And then one thing that's interesting with this kitchen as well is how there is both a stove and like this griddle beside it, which is pretty cool. Honestly, I wish I had a kitchen with this in it. I do pancakes on those things every day. I put this huge hood and then I put some shelves underneath it to put more clutter because you do have a shelf with clutter above the stove. And I just thought that was like a very like something you see throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s even is like a lot of clutter in the kitchen with like shelves and stuff above the stove directly above it. I feel like you don't see that as often in homes now, maybe because it's a fire hazard, I don't know, but it's just kind of unique and it was fun to do something that was a bit older in style. So I just wanted to put that out there a little bit while I'm working on the kitchen. And I'm going to do like a couple more facts because I think these are really fun to think about and just especially for the times trying to consider what was going on. Something about this movie was that it was based on a novel that was by William Peter Blatty, who went to Georgetown. And so he adapted his own 1971 novel into this screenplay, and it won Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. I almost said adaptation, but nonetheless, same thing. Georgetown says the story was inspired by a 1949 exorcism case that involved a 14-year-old boy from Mount Rainier, Maryland, which Blatty learned about while he was a Georgetown student. So there's like a lot of ties to Georgetown, and it makes sense as to why Georgetown is included in this so much. And I just find that to be fascinating to me, especially for it to be a university. But you do have, I think, a lot of people who are Catholic who go to that. And then it's like very much tied to this Exorcist movie in such a light that's just kind of funny to me and ironic that that is what happened. And then one thing that was interesting was that they had about 300 Georgetown students, staff, faculty, and Jesuits who were extras. And so they played things like passerbys, they played tennis players, they have protesters at this one part in the movie. And the Georgetown Archive says that they were paid between $35 and $128 per day, which, think about that, back in the 70s, that was a lot of money. Just to be an extra in a movie, like that's actually kind of crazy to think about in a way. And then the Warner Brothers paid Georgetown to film on campus about $1,000 a day for use of university property. I could only imagine how much that would be now, because it would definitely not be $1,000 a day. You'd probably be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars per day. So take that for what you will. I thought that was a really fascinating tidbit with that. And then I want to say I also remember reading, I don't have it here, but I do think that, I don't know if it was Blatty or someone studied the Jesuits like lifestyle for a week in preparation for this movie, which I thought was really interesting too. So like trying to get into the weeds on some of the little details there. Oh, I did use this pumpkin. That pumpkin that you see, there's a pumpkin in the movie, and I use that because I had that as CC. So that's another CC object, but again, you don't really need it. You don't need it. Don't worry about it. If you download it, you just won't have the pumpkin there. It's not a big deal. I like sometimes to use some CC. I say that, but it's literally, I think this is like the third time that I can recall I've ever used CC in my builds. But just for the sake of it matching the movie, that's like the one time I'll break my rule of not using CC. It was just fun because I already had that and I wanted to use it. So now we're going through and cluttering up the kitchen a pretty good bit, putting all sorts of cereal, the dishes, the scales, the cookbooks. I wanted to have some fun with this. Right now it's open, and that's just because whenever you have a wall here, obviously you can't see into the room very well. So this is like just something I do, and it's just way easier to clutter your shelves first, then add the walls and the doors, and then nobody can see all the hard work that you put into it, but at least you know it's there and that you did it correctly. And now I'm just adding the doors there. So I do have my doorways. They're kind of just sectioned off right now. It's just like open, but I eventually go in and add walls with archways to them. It was just easier to visualize at the time without putting the walls and such, just so I can make sure that the floor plan matched as well as I could get it to match. But I will say the kitchen is one of those spaces that I did spend a pretty good bit of time cluttering on. Now we are moving over into the dining space. So this one, I had to cut out an embarrassingly long amount of footage because I could not find a set of furniture, like a dining table with chairs, that worked very well. And I tell you, like, when I say this is footage that is sped up 5 times speed, I had multiple minutes of footage of me looking at different chairs and tables and swatches of chairs and tables, which, to my defense, it is because the Sims team does not match swatches very well across the same set of furniture. And I think some of you know that that's true, and you can understand the frustration with that when you find the perfect table or the perfect chairs, but then you can't find a matching set. It is the most frustrating thing with this game. And it's just like, that's when I wish I had a color wheel in this game so we could actually match wood tones and such, but I won't go on that. I won't get on that. But I ended up like trying to imitate the best I could from the images we have. We only have like one, maybe two short scenes in the dining room. I think it's really just one main scene in the dining space though that I pulled images from. And this is where it gets a little bit different with the floor plan too, because you can see over beside the dining space here, there's this big room that's just empty. We don't see that in the movie at all. The only thing we do see is by the front door, there's an opening to that room, and it's cracked open. Like the door is open a little bit, and I can only see like one little bitty part of a corner of that room. So I was able to imitate that, but the rest I just kind of did on vibes. So the rooms that I did on vibes, I didn't like necessarily go overboard with cluttering or like do anything too specific. I just wanted it to match the aesthetic of the rest of the house, if that makes sense. And that's just because obviously I can't just imitate something that doesn't exist, that I can't reference. But I did try to put some like fun nods to things that I think match the rest of the residents. So we do get the vast majority of the downstairs though from the movie. I will say the tricky thing with this study is that it was so narrow. I really needed an extra tile over, but at this point it would have changed so much of the build, and I was like, I am not doing that. I cannot go back and redo and move everything over. So I stuck with that. I made it work. I had to make some tweaks to this as well. But the study is a little bit on the narrower side than what it seems like it is in the movie. But thankfully, we have these bookcases because that was the most important component to this. And these bookcases from Secret Sanctuary are actually pretty thin up against the wall. They do not jut out that far. So that worked really well. And then the other tricky part to the downstairs was the living room. And you would think that that wouldn't be that difficult, but the main scene that we get in the movie that has the living room is when a party with like dozens of people there is taking place, and they're standing all around the living room. So you can't even see the furniture that's in the living room. So there were a couple times I kind of had to guess like what would be there, or I could tell people were sitting down on something, even though I couldn't really see the piece of furniture itself. So I tried to match the vibe as much as I could with that. Obviously, with stuff like this, when you're recreating homes, you have to take some liberties, and even if it's from a movie, it's just dependent on the scenes that you get. So I did the best I could, and I do think it turned out pretty well. Just trying to figure out some things. Obviously, like the desk would be bigger if I had more space. I wouldn't have used a one tile desk, but that's just how it is. And they did have lamps with animals on them, so it was perfect. I actually can't remember if it was a giraffe or an elephant. I can't see the slideshow right now like y'all can, but I think that desk actually did have some type of animal lamp in there. And if it wasn't in there, there were definitely animal lamps in the house somewhere. So I just really liked the nod to elephants throughout the house. So I put a little elephant statue in the study in that bookcase as well. Now, we do know we have this scene, multiple scenes with the piano in it. So we have that. And then there are these cool built-ins in the living room space that I was determined to figure out how I could do in this game. So I corner off this one part right here that you can see me working on, and I put the shelves up against the wall that is diagonal. That way it like easily slots there, and it's closer to the front, because what I end up doing is I eventually find an arched window to get the arched look there, and then I can just size down the window so much that the hole for the window stays there, but then the window that's really small, you don't see it at all. So I go ahead and clutter up the shelves first, having deleted the wall. So put the wall, that way you can put the shelves, then delete the wall, the shelves are still there. You can clutter up your shelves, put the wall back, then add the window, and then you can like raise a platform up at the bottom to make it meet whatever level the bottom shelf is at. And that's how I did it. It sounds more difficult than it is. It's not really difficult at all, but you can see like how well that works so well here. But there are these really pretty built-ins in the house. There are two more that I do like this over by the fireplace. So on this little jut out here, I end up putting a fireplace in the center, and then there are two built-ins, one on each side here. That's what those tiles are for. And there's also one that I do like this in the staircase as well that you won't see. I cut that out of the video. I cut the bathrooms out of this video. It was like just too much footage. It's funny how when you recreate homes in The Sims, I feel like sometimes you would think it would be faster because you already have the stuff you need. You just got to find stuff to imitate it. But in The Sims, with how poorly categorized things are, that's what actually takes up more time, is trying to find objects that imitate, especially when you know of said objects and you can't find them in the catalog anywhere, and you don't know what they're called because they are the most oddly named, like bizarrely named things in this game sometimes that just make no sense, that you can't search for. So that was a little bit obnoxious, but I think that was like the main thing I ran into as an issue in recreating this home, was that I knew we had some things, but it was just hard to find those things. Now we have a little bit of a love seat over here, and I ended up like trying to put a couple of lamps. The lamps were kind of fun to do. There were different lamps in every room. The styles were vastly different. Like everything just needed to feel older. That was the main thing, but there were not matching sets very much in this house. There were three different lamps in one room, vastly different styles. It was fun to do that though, because I think that's what sets aside more like older homes, are like whenever you have different sets of furniture that come together. I do this a lot in my cottage builds actually, where I'll have like a love seat or couch that's one color and style, and then I'll get something that's drastically different for the chair and it's a different color. I like mismatching furniture, and I just think it adds a warmth tone to it whenever you're in a room. It's like cozy, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Not that this is what we were going for in this house, but just older homes in general. I think it's like a lot more mismatched furniture. It was more common back then. I feel like nowadays people like to have these like really matching sets of furniture in their home, throughout their home. They want everything to match and look cohesive. Back then, I don't think that was as much of a thing as just having lots of stuff. I think back in these times, materialism in some ways was worse than it is now, but I will acknowledge the fact that consumerism is way worse now than it was back then, I think. So, just not really a distinction per se. There are some slight differences there, I think, in my opinion, but very interesting to think about, I feel like, in the least. Now, I'm starting to work on all the little landing spaces. So we have some fun little accent tables and some clutter objects, decor. You can see these are the doors I was talking about, these double doors right here, where in one scene they're open and you can see the corner. I put a little rocking chair and I put some planters there, and I think there's like a display or a bookcase or bookshelf or something that I put there in that area. Then we have this little hutch space by the rounded window in this hall that leads into the living room, and the staircase is right there. And I was like going back and forth on this chair that they have right there, but they have another chair directly across from it. I was like, this is too many chairs. These chairs are too big as well, and they're bulky. So I was like, I'm just going to put one. So I just ended up putting one, and I can't remember if I leave it where it is or if I move it over to the other side. It might stay where it is. But just doing like the little touches here, I think is nice. Now, getting back into some of the fun little facts about the movie, one thing that I thought was interesting was how important this tree in the front yard mattered. So there's this iconic tree in the front of the house, but apparently there were some archival notes about that, and that there was a lot of concern from the aspect of filming for this tree, and they were having to rely on it losing most of its leaves by early November, which I thought was kind of fascinating, and luckily it did. And it's like interesting how landscaping can be such a major factor in filming, and it's something that obviously makes sense, but you don't really think about it, I guess, unless you're used to doing that. So they actually needed these leaves to fall off the tree, and I'm not entirely sure if it was to film things from higher up, like through windows, or to get certain angles of the house, and also just to be able to see the house better from the distant shot like they have for the actual movie. So I think there were multiple reasons as to why they needed the leaves to fall off, but I thought that was kind of interesting that they just needed to have nature do its thing, and by early November, the tree could not have very many leaves, or else they wouldn't have been able to shoot things the way that they needed to. So fun little tidbit with that. Now we're working on Reagan's room right now. So we're now upstairs with this. And I will say with this, it's a little bit different from what I usually do with my speed builds, which if you've been here this long, you probably already noticed. But I usually will go through, lay out the space with just the big pieces of furniture, and then I go back and do all the clutter. And that's just how my brain works. I can't just stay on one room and actually finish the entire room. I have to get the vibes of the whole house or whatever I'm building first in order to like process the overall aesthetic that I'm going for, or whatever design elements, so it can all tie and fit in together. Then I go in and clutter. But here, since it was a reference, I went ahead and did each room in its entirety before moving forward. So I do all the clutter and everything all at one time. And I did put the debug baby floating above the bed, because if you've seen The Exorcist, you know one of the most iconic parts of the film is whenever Reagan is floating up in air over her bed. So I put these butterflies too, because there's some artwork in her bedroom by the bed like that had the same color scheme, and it was like shaped in such a way. Like I like how the butterflies arched across a little bit, and it helped give the same vibe that I was going for with that. So we have a vanity there, we have the wardrobe, and then we have this like fun little built-in area by the window, which I think turned out pretty cute with the Grange Mudroom kit. I think that stuff comes in handy for little built-in nook spaces like that with benches and such. And it looked natural with all the pillows and everything. So I think this room turned out really well. One thing that's interesting is with the bathrooms, maybe it's not that interesting. It's just like whatever. But the bathrooms, you only get one shot where you can see inside the bathroom off of Reagan's bedroom, which also iconic. Like how cool it would have been to be a little kid and have your own bathroom. I don't know. I would have loved that. But I ended up like taking a picture of that, and I censored out Reagan because I thought that was weird if I were to have that on stream. So you just see the mom kind of there, but Reagan's in the bathtub in this scene, and that's all you get for that. So I pulled the pink tile and the bathtub and put it where I saw it, and then I just basically had to guess the rest. I did reference the blueprint of the house a little bit for knowing where some of this stuff went, and that's also true for the other bathroom that you won't see until we tour it at the end. That's a really big bathroom, and then there's this one little square corner that's parsed off, and I was like, I think that's a shower. I don't know. I don't know if it shows a shower, but I was like, I'm going to turn that into a big double-headed shower, and that's what I ended up doing there. And literally for that bathroom, all you get is one quick little scene of, I think it's one of the priests goes in there and he's at the sink, and that's all you get. So I just had the little sink and the mirror to base the entire bathroom off of, which isn't a big deal, but it's just kind of funny how you have to just make lemonade with the lemons that you get. And I had a lot of fun with that. So we're working on the mom's bedroom now, which we see multiple angles of. Half of her room is like this nice seating area, and she has a vanity back in the back by the window, and then the other half has her bed. So there's a lot of different styles and elements to this, and she has like a phone by her bed, so it's fun to get to use the corded phone. I used a lot of phones in this house because they're all over the place. But I ended up doing that for her mom's bed, and we have this big wardrobe over here, and then I put some additional shelving next to it, but just because there's like so much furniture. Like I said, not to say it's not true today, but back in the day, I feel like it was just more common to have all sorts of different types of furniture in every room. You had so many different styles, and it was just more a matter of collecting things than just getting things that you actually need. And maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. I feel like nowadays people still get more than they need, but it's just like different types of things that they get. I don't think people are necessarily collecting furniture and getting all sorts of types of different furniture in their houses. I feel like people get a lot more like digital goods, like games and stuff. Maybe that's just because I like playing video games, but also just buying stuff like everyday needs and things online more so. And I don't know. I could be very off on that, but I just think back in the day, it was very much in fashion to see how many things you could collect and get. It just really showed, I don't know. I feel like there was a different type of pride back then in having a lot of stuff. Like it was just a thing to have a lot of stuff. And I just don't think it's the same way now. It's the same, but different. Let me know. Does anyone in the comments know what I'm trying to say and can maybe say it better for me? Because right now I can't think of a way to say it. I put this little bench too from Island Living. I do this all the time. I love the style of this bench because it works well when you size it down as like a little ottoman. It looks perfect for a little ottoman to put at the foot of the bed or in hallways because it doesn't stick out and it's not very bulky or clunky either. And then I'm just adding like a few more little touches of clutter. And on the fireplace here, I put some more giraffe statues. Again, just another nod to animal elements that are in the movie throughout. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more. And obviously, with the way that stuff places in this game, you have to fill in the slots. So now we are getting into the attic space. So this is the last space that we're working on. Just keep in mind, like I'm going to show you all the rest of the house, the other rooms that I haven't shown you in the speed build for the tour. It's just for the sake of the speed build not being so long, I wanted to keep it this way. Now, one thing you see in the image is this big chandelier. There are chairs everywhere, there's furniture, but there's this one little mannequin thing that when you sew stuff that you put clothes on, and I wanted to grab a mannequin from the gallery and make that happen actually in the build. And that took a little finagling because I had this posed one that I wanted, and then the game crashed and I had to redo everything. And then as the game loads, I do want to just go ahead and say that the production had enough incidents that happened on set that they actually got a priest to come in and bless the set more than once. They had a reputation for mishaps happening while they were filming, and they claimed that the set was cursed, so they actually had to have the set blessed multiple times. And then also on that same kind of subject, audiences back in the day for this had a very, very strong reaction to this movie when it came out. People reportedly were like fainting, they were vomiting, they were reacting like so strongly in theaters to it. It like sounds like something that would be so exaggerated nowadays. I think it just like really heightened the horror genre in a lot of ways, which is why I really appreciate this movie. So Finch built it over in this lot in San Myshuno, and this is the house from the exterior. So the trees we were talking about, like obviously in the game they don't look the same, but there's like a big tree here that comes across this way. And the only thing I added to the exterior, again, because Finch did the exterior, I just added a crypt because I thought that was a really funny nod to do. But let's just go ahead and tour the inside of this, and you can see all the fun things that we did. So as you come through the front door here, you can see your dining space. Off of here is that room that we just don't get to see in the movie. But I put another little table in here and just put a couple clutter items. I put a little hutch. And then coming around to the dining space, this is like when they're sitting down here. It's, I think, a rounded table, but I couldn't find one that worked well enough, so I did a rectangular table. And then we come into our kitchen here. I did use these island living doors, so you can kind of see into the pantry a little bit better. You see all that work that I put into it. But this is our kitchen. And then obviously as the scenes change throughout the movie, it was actually nice to see that the whole setup actually changes with it. So throughout the movie, you see the kitchen, but things are moved around in different places. So it makes it feel more realistic that way. Here's our little breakfast nook. And near the beginning, there is a scene where she's typing on the typewriter, and I wanted to put that in here just as a fun nod using the cottage living computer. We have our study off of that. Fun little study space. I feel like we got the vibe of this space really well. Uh-oh. Oh, God. Actually, I think I purposefully didn't do ceilings for this house. We're going to leave it that way. I'm actually not going to do the ceilings, which is really weird because I usually always do my ceilings. And then here's our living room space. The stuff wasn't like loading in, I guess, because it glitched it with the window. This is what it looks like, which I think turned out really well with these little built-ins. I just wish they weren't so deep, but here I didn't want to like have them right up front against that like opening. The layout of furniture in this room is also a little bit weird and clunky, but that's how it is in the movie. And then going down into the basement, I really love how this turned out. I think we like nailed this on the head in a lot of ways. I love the little art nook over here in the corner. I think that turned out well. We had our calendar. And then this is the freezer. You might wonder why the bird's here. And in one of the scenes, the mom sets the bird down right here. Whenever, I think it's Reagan, gives her a bird. Like, she does work over here. So I have one over here with the paper making stuff from Adventure Awaits. And I put one over here because in one of the scenes, the bird is sitting on top of the freezer. So it's a little nod that you probably wouldn't get Easter egg wise. And then our Ouija board's in here with the voodoo doll, just as a fun thing. And then this is what I was talking about, another little display case off of the landing with the stairs. I love the idea of that as well. I don't know what happened here, but that tile should not be in there. Then when you come upstairs, there's so much. So Reagan's bedroom is right over here. You come in. I put like the creepy doll by the bed right there. Obviously you have Reagan floating. I put the little imaginary friend doll. So I had some fun with the stuff that I did in this room as well. There's like a fish tank over here. So I put this there and then the bathroom off of that. We just see the pink tile in the bathtub here, so I just played off of that. Got more of the kitty type stuff. And then here's the other big bathroom that you don't see me work on, but I just based it off of the other so it matches. I made this a big double-headed shower. And then this is all you see like in the scene from the movie. It's just like this part. So anyways, I just based the rest of it off of it. It's a really big bathroom too, and in the floor plan it looks really empty, so I don't know, kind of odd. This is the mom's bedroom. I love the aesthetic of this. When you come in, it just like screams kind of cozy in a way and like old in a positive way, and I love the way that this turned out. And then she actually does have a closet off of here that I did put stuff in. So made that a little bit functional in a way for that aspect. And then from this angle, you see her bed. And then just more of the landings that you can see. These are the 2 rooms that aren't in the movie. So I just like completed them as more so guest bedroom spaces, so to speak. But I do think it matches the rest of the house with the furniture and the colors. And then another little bedroom off of that. So I was just picturing these as guest spaces, so I didn't do too much with them. And then you can see here, this is what I was talking about with the attic space. So this is a CC object with the door, but we're just going to go ahead and climb up in here. And I like this mannequin because it looks like she's looking down, like who's coming up? Who's coming up through the hole here? Let me watch you. But we have like some fun stuff. I kept it dark, obviously, on purpose. I don't want the lights on up here, but put some fun clutter up in this space. It's a really big attic space. So that's the build, y'all. I had a lot of fun with this, and it was a really big build. It took a minute to actually kind of clutter relative to what's in the movie. So I put this on the gallery as the Exorcist house. Just know it did have the CC, so you do have to mark show CC. It's 230,000 simoleons, pretty expensive, and it does use a lot of packs because we had a lot of clutter to imitate from the movie. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you want to see me do some other things like this, like in the horror genre, and have ideas, put those down below, because I know Finch and I were wanting to do some more of this in the future. I'd love to see even ideas that aren't horror related. It could be anything that I could just do on my own. I just want to do something y'all are excited about, you know? And on that note, I do want to say really quickly that I am still fundraising for the Trevor Project, so I'm going to put that link down below. As of right now, we have raised over $2,100, which is absolutely crazy to me, and I keep saying that, but it is wild to me how halfway through the month we had raised that much money. If you want to check out any of my other like recreation builds, I'll put the playlist over here for you. I want to give a huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support, and with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye. Y'all, I'm curious, what are some of your favorite horror movies? Put those down in the comments below.